Dr. Chris Williams had to cancel late last night. He got called away by his supervisor to do some important strategic planning work, and so I'm up next. And I don't know what I was thinking going after those two speakers. That was a mistake. Gosh, that was great. But I do want to update you on a little bit of research that we're working on related to technology and how we can use that to also better improve our monitoring. So this will be a short one, and this is still in progress and what it can do. So and after I'm done in 10 minutes, I'll close it up with Bob Long and we'll get you all on your way. So many of you already know my name, Luke McCauley. I'm with the University of Maryland Extension. So I'd like to give a little broad outline of what we're going to cover and why acoustic monitoring, I think, is a really important tool to be thinking about in the future. We'll talk about current range estimates, our current approaches to monitoring for birds and know where they are. And then we're going to look at this new technology and these autonomous recording units and the machine learning that can be used to help identify birds. And then finally close just on maybe some of the landscape scale monitoring opportunities I think are out there and coming as soon as we really fine tune this. So some people have mentioned eBird. It's a Cornell website where people get, it's a citizen science-based website where you can upload your bird sightings. It's maybe one of the best tools we have today for knowing where birds are. And this is the scale at which we can see bird abundance. These are quail, northern bobwhite quail populations. And you see the purple rectangles are presence. And these are huge, I think 20-kilometer blocks. The orange, just so you know, are perceived to be pin-raised birds, so they're not really considered viable wild populations. So the purple are the wild populations. But you can see, like, these are really coarse estimates of where birds are. There are many thousands of acres in each of those squares. This is what it looks like when you zoom in more closely. You can see these are the individual occurrences, and this is what's currently informing a lot of our range maps. Why is this important? Well, our focal areas for our government programs, the NRCS programs, are based on estimates of where existing populations are. If you look at Maryland right now, the Eastern Shore is in the focal area for, this is for the working lands for wildlife for northern bobwhites, but the rest of Maryland isn't, and I think it's because there's a perception, or maybe there's the concern that maybe there's just not enough northern bobwhites left on the Western Shore to even work on. Daniel Lawson put this map together a couple years ago using eBird sightings to estimate, okay, where are our strongholds of northern bobwhites left on the landscape. Certainly he compiled this based on those eBird sightings and got a little bit finer detail than what you might see on those big square maps. But I want to turn to, so how are these created now? Well, citizen science, but if we're going to use a more research-oriented approach, what people like Eric Ludwig and Dan Small do when they go out to their sites to know how many birds there are, they go out and they stand at a predetermined site and they stand there for 5 minutes. And they have to start their surveys 30 minutes before dawn usually. And they stand there for 5 minutes and they write down everything they see for 5 minutes out to a couple hundred yards. And then they have to drive to the next site and listen for 5 minutes, and then they go to the next site and listen for 5 minutes. They repeat that 3 times in a season. So they'll do it maybe June 1st, June 20th, and July 2nd. And that's what they get. So they get 3 days, 5 minutes at each point. It's the best we can do. You can imagine that takes a lot of time and effort. So what are the challenges? Well, you only get those 3 little 5-minute snapshots in the course of 6 weeks of season. And sometimes birds only call for a very short period. Especially, I think this is an issue with covey calls in the fall. We are seeing some results in our data that some of that calling happens in just about 10 minutes in the morning. So if you're doing 1 point count for 5 minutes and you have to drive 5 minutes to another site, those birds have stopped calling and you're not going to detect them at that place. It takes a lot of labor and it's expensive. So how can new technology and these recording units help us? These are audio moths. There are other models available as well. And you can set these to program them to record for 2 hours, 3 hours, or longer every day of the season. So we currently have some out right now that have been recording for 3 weeks, and we're getting 2 hours a day for 3 weeks straight through. Here's a picture of one out at Idlewild. We are looking to monitor to see whether any quail might start to colonize this area in the future. Now they've done a lot of habitat work. We like to camouflage them just to make them a little bit less attractive for anybody who might want to run off with one of these. So we can use these to evaluate response to treatments, whether it's these fallowing strips, prescribed burns, which is on the right. And then we can take these recordings, and this is really amazing. If anybody have anybody used the app on your phone called Merlin that you can use? There's a bunch of hands. For those of you who have not used Merlin and you want to learn birds, get that app. It is amazing. It'll just expand. It'll accelerate your learning of birds remarkably fast. I use it all the time. But it uses machine learning algorithms to basically identify birds, and so we're using this as well. Working off the previous work of James Martin's lab, Victoria Nolan did this for fall covey counts, and as well as the Kittsey's lab at University of Pittsburgh, where they have deployed thousands of these things to watch for forest birds. I have some great undergraduate help. Evan Griffiths here. We had Jonathan Sean help put these algorithms together, work from these tools, and we were starting to run these through and fine-tune this work. So this is what the outputs look like. We get these, the machine learning estimates like how likely it is that a bird is present. But I think really where we're going as we fine-tune this and get more accuracy is trying to figure out how we can use this on a landscape level to monitor. And I think about power lines, which have this early succession habitat. It's already in place and it creates a huge corridor on the landscape. Of course, you can use this on wildlife management areas or natural resource management areas. But here's a close-up of what a power line area looks like here on the right. This is maybe a couple hundred yards wide on these high voltage power lines. And you could create these corridors along, this is a nuclear power plant in Calvert County, and this corridor goes all the way through the county, maybe 40, 50 miles long. And so you could actually start to put these recording units every few miles on this thing to start to see, what kind of birds do we have, and are they present, are they expanding, where might we want to take extra care for management. So with that, I just wanted to show you where we are and where I think a lot of things are going in the future as these algorithms continue to improve, and we can really enhance our knowledge of where birds are and help to expand and make these connections happen between habitat patches. Many thanks to all the people who have helped get us through this and figure this out. Here's my email if you have any questions, and with that, I wrap it up and take any questions if anybody have any, or we can move on to our next speaker.